The colony of Eden 7 was alive with the hum of activity. Towering metal structures reflected the pale blue light of the twin suns above. Hovercars zipped through the narrow skyways, and the chatter of colonists filled the streets below. Humans had worked for decades to tame this distant world, turning rocky plains and toxic wastelands into thriving settlements. Among the many families living here, Liam's family had settled near the edge of the colony. Liam was a curious child of 8, small for his age but brave beyond reason. He loved exploring the perimeter of the colony, often sneaking past the warning signs that marked restricted zones. His parents, weary from work at the energy refineries, often warned him, "Don't go too far, Liam. The aliens patrol these areas. It's not safe." But children by nature rarely listen. That morning, Liam wandered farther than usual, chasing a small, glowing creature that flitted near the rocks. The creature looked almost like a miniature dragon with wings that shimmered in the sunlight. Liam giggled, completely unaware of the danger creeping closer. The restricted zone was patrolled by alien officers, part of the Zorathian Protectorate, a militaristic alien species that controlled vast portions of the outer colonies. To the aliens, humans were fragile, expendable, and often a nuisance. They enforced strict rules with brutal efficiency. One such officer, Varkan, was stationed near Liam's exploration area. Varkan was tall, with armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. His face was hidden behind a helmet, but the cold efficiency in his movements left no doubt about his nature. He noticed a small human figure darting dangerously close to the warning perimeter. "Stop, human!" Varkan shouted, his voice echoing mechanically through the air. But Liam, enthralled by the glowing creature, didn't hear him. Varkan's hand went to his weapon, a sleek energy baton designed to incapacitate rather than kill. Yet, his species had little patience for hesitation. In one swift motion he struck Liam. The child fell, stunned and injured. The glowing creature vanished into the rocks, leaving Liam alone. The colonists nearby screamed in shock. Some ran forward, hoping to intervene, while others froze in fear. The Zorathians, with their towering frames and deadly precision, were not to be challenged. Varkan looked down at the child, unmoved by human emotions. To him it was a simple matter of enforcement. The colony had rules. Liam had broken them. The consequences, as far as the Zorathians were concerned, were justified. But the humans didn't see it that way. A crowd had gathered, watching the small form of Liam on the ground, bleeding and trembling. Among them was Captain Alara Voss, a former human soldier who had fought in the outer wars. She clenched her fists, fury burning in her eyes. "How dare they?" she whispered. "This is a child, not a criminal." Varkan, sensing the rising tension, raised his baton again. "Step back, humans. Interference will be punished." The crowd hesitated. Even adults knew the Zorathians' reputation for ruthlessness. But Alara couldn't stand by. She stepped forward, her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "We are not attacking. We only want to help the child." Varkan's helmet tilted slightly as if considering her words. Then, without warning, he struck Liam once more, this time with full force. The child's small body crumpled, and a horrifying silence fell over the area. The colonists gasped. A few vomited from the shock. Others shouted in anger, but it was useless. Varkan's presence alone silenced any thoughts of resistance. Alara knelt beside Liam, tears streaming down her face. "Please, someone stop this madness," she pleaded, but her voice carried no weight against the alien officer. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, far from Eden 7, a group of beings known as the Deathworlders monitored incidents involving humans. These warriors were legendary, feared by countless alien species for their strength and uncompromising sense of justice. When reports of Liam's attack reached them, there was no debate, action was required. Humans were under their protection, and no alien, no matter how powerful, could harm them without consequence. Back on the colony, chaos had erupted. Some humans attempted to flee with Liam's body, while others confronted Varkan, shouting accusations and insults. The officer, trained for intimidation and violence, remained unmoved. His eyes, hidden behind a reflective visor, betrayed no emotion. Among the crowd, whispers began to spread. "The Deathworlders, they won't let this go. They're coming. I've heard the stories." Some laughed nervously, thinking it was just a myth. Others hoped fervently that the legends were true. Alara carefully lifted Liam in her arms, noticing how fragile the child had become. Blood stained her uniform, and the panic of the crowd pressed around her. She knew that if help didn't arrive soon, the consequences would be far worse than any alien attack. Varkan, finally seeing that the humans were not dispersing, activated a warning signal. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for threats, and the crowd began to panic. Families scrambled to protect their own children. The scene was a mix of fear, anger, and helplessness. And then in the sky above, a shadow appeared. A distant glimmer of movement, almost too small to notice at first, grew rapidly. Colonists stopped in their tracks, shielding their eyes against the light. The shadow descended with impossible speed, landing beyond the perimeter where the Zorathians had gathered. A hush fell over the crowd. Something powerful, something alien but not like the Zorathians had arrived. The stories of the Deathworlders were no longer whispers, they were real. Varkan glanced toward the new arrival, and for the first time hesitation flickered across his stoic demeanor. He had heard of these beings, warriors who punished injustice without mercy, who considered humans under their protection sacred. He knew the consequences of underestimating them could be fatal. Liam, barely conscious, looked up from Ilara's arms, sensing the shift in the air. A small whimper escaped him, and hope sparked in the hearts of the colonists. Help had arrived, but whether it was enough to save the day no one knew. The incident on Eden 7 had started with curiosity and ended in tragedy. Yet it had also set the stage for something far greater. Justice that no alien officer could ignore, and a reckoning that would echo across the galaxy. The first part of this story closed with the colony holding its breath, waiting for the legendary Deathworlders to enforce justice personally. The call for justice. Far across the galaxy, in the shadow of jagged mountains and blackened wastelands, lay the homeworld of the Deathworlders. Their planet, Crother Prime, was a place of extremes. Rivers of molten rock cut through frozen plains. Violent storms tore across barren landscapes. Life here was harsh and only the strongest survived. The Deathworlders thrived in this environment, forging their bodies and minds into weapons of unmatched power. On this day, the air crackled with tension as the Council of Elders gathered in the central hall of Crother Prime's capital. Towering pillars of dark stone supported the massive chamber, and glowing runes traced ancient symbols across the walls. Each elder radiated authority, their eyes reflecting lifetimes of battle, strategy, and wisdom. The news had arrived from the distant colony of Eden 7. A human child had been struck down by an alien officer, left to suffer because of bureaucratic rules and alien cruelty. To the Deathworlders this was more than a crime, it was an insult to their code. Humans were sacred under their protection, and no one could harm them without facing consequences. A low murmur filled the chamber as the council reviewed the reports. Hollow images of the colony, the Zorathian officer, and the frightened human colonists flickered across the room. The images were clear, and the reality of the situation struck every Deathworlder present. This is unacceptable, said Arinder, the eldest of the council. His voice boomed, echoing against the stone walls. Humans are not merely weak creatures to be toyed with. They are under our protection. This act must not go unanswered. Another elder, Kael'thar, stepped forward. Our interference in human affairs is not taken lightly, yet the council's purpose is clear. Injustice has been done and it must be corrected. We cannot allow the Zorathians to believe that humans are expendable. The council members nodded in agreement. The atmosphere was electric. The Deathworlders were not known for diplomacy, they were known for action. If humans were harmed, they would strike personally, swiftly, and with overwhelming force. A younger warrior, Ravik, clenched his fists. His muscles rippled under his dark armor, and his eyes burned with intensity. We should not delay. The humans are vulnerable now. If we wait, more harm may come. Let us travel immediately and ensure that justice is done. Arinder regarded him with calm authority. Ravik, your eagerness honors you. But remember, this mission requires precision. We must strike with power, yes, but also with purpose. Our presence must leave no doubt. Humans are protected, and all who harm them will pay dearly. The council agreed on the course of action. A task force of elite Deathworlders would journey to Eden 7. They would confront the alien officer, enforce justice, and make it clear to the Zorathian forces that humans were not to be harmed again. Preparations were swift. In the war chambers beneath Crother Prime, warriors selected advanced weaponry, reinforced armor, and energy vessels capable of interstellar travel. Ships that had never seen defeat were readied for the journey. Each vessel was a fortress, bristling with weapons and powered by engines that could traverse the void in days, not months. Ravik and a team of elite warriors gathered on the observation deck of the largest vessel, the Dreadstar. They gazed at the swirling stars, each one a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy, and the challenge that awaited them. You feel it too, don't you? Ravik asked one of his comrades, a towering figure named Kaler. The humans are counting on us. If we fail. Kaler shook his massive head. We will not fail. Never forget who we are. We are the Deathworlders. We punish injustice and we protect those under our charge. The humans will see our strength and the Zorathians will learn fear. Meanwhile, intelligence reports continued to stream in. Holofeeds showed the Zorathian officer, Varkhan, patrolling the perimeter of the colony, unaware that the Deathworlders were coming. The aliens remained arrogant, convinced that humans were weak and helpless. But the Deathworlders had studied the Zorathians' tactics, their weaknesses and their reliance on fear. This would be a mission of precision and power, a demonstration that the galaxy would remember. Back on Eden 7, humans waited anxiously. Rumors of the Deathworlders had already reached them, whispered stories of warriors from a harsh world who punished injustice with terrifying speed. Some believed it to be myth. Others clung to hope, praying that these legendary protectors would arrive before more harm came to their colony. In the command chamber of the Dreadstar, Irinder reviewed the plan one last time. The approach would be discreet at first, landing on the outskirts of the colony to avoid unnecessary conflict. But when they confronted the Zorathians, there would be no negotiation. Justice would be delivered. We strike at dawn, Irinder announced, his voice cutting through the silence. The humans are waiting. The perpetrators will not escape. Let it be known, no alien will harm a human under our watch. Not now, not ever. The Deathworlders prepared their vessels for departure. Engines roared to life, shaking the massive chamber. Lights flashed across the hulls as energy fields activated, shielding the ships for the long journey through space. As the Dreadstar lifted from Crother Prime, Ravik felt a surge of purpose. The journey would not be easy, and the Zorathians were dangerous opponents, but this was their duty. Humans had been attacked and the Deathworlders' code was clear. Justice must be served personally. Through the vastness of space, the vessels moved with terrifying speed. Stars streaked past, nebulae glowed in the distance, and the cold darkness of the void seemed almost alive. On board, the warriors prepared mentally and physically, sharpening their weapons, studying the enemy, and reinforcing the mindset that failure was not an option. Weeks passed in travel, yet the anticipation only grew. Ravik could feel it, the electric tension in the air, the unspoken knowledge that a reckoning was approaching. Eden 7 was close now. Soon, the humans would witness the arrival of their protectors, and the Zorathians would learn the meaning of true fear. Finally, as Eden 7 came into view, the massive spires of the colony gleamed under twin suns. Hovercars moved along their routes and humans scurried about, unaware of the approaching storm. The Deathworlders' ships cast enormous shadows over the landscape, signaling the arrival of a force that the galaxy would not forget. The council had spoken, the warriors were ready, and justice was on its way. This was no ordinary mission. This was a personal enforcement of the Deathworlders' code. The humans' lives, their safety, and the sanctity of their world were now directly in the hands of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. And so, the call for justice was answered. Arrival of the Deathworlders. The twin suns of Eden 7 shone brightly over the colony, casting long shadows across the metal buildings and streets filled with human activity. But something unusual stirred in the sky. A faint glimmer, almost invisible at first, grew larger with every passing second. Colonists paused mid-step, shading their eyes to see what approached. The air trembled with a low hum, a vibration that seemed to resonate through the ground itself. Hovercars skidded to a stop, and children clutched their parents' hands, unsure of the strange presence above. Then, with a sudden flash of light, massive vessels descended from the sky. They were unlike any ships humans, or even the Zorathians, had ever seen. Sleek, black, and bristling with strange energy conduits, the ships radiated power and authority. The colonists gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. The legends, are they real? The Deathworlders. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others knelt instinctively as if recognizing the ancient force before them. Inside the largest vessel, the Dreadstar, Ravik and his team prepared to land. The warriors were towering, muscular, and clad in armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their helmets were angular, with glowing eyes that cut through the dim interior of the ship. Each movement was precise, each breath controlled, as though every Deathworlder was a weapon honed for one purpose: justice. Irinder's voice echoed through the command chamber. We land at the colony outskirts first. Observe. Prepare. The humans must see that their protectors have arrived, but the Zorathians will be dealt with swiftly and decisively. The ships descended toward a large open space at the colony's edge. The ground shook with each impact, sending dust and debris into the air. The humans watched, mouths agape, as the massive forms of the Deathworlders disembarked. Their presence was imposing, tall, broad-shouldered, and exuding strength that seemed almost inhuman. Ravik led the first group, stepping onto the dusty ground with measured purpose. His eyes scanned the area, noting every Zorathian patrol, every potential threat. Behind him, Kaler and the rest of the team moved silently, weapons at the ready. Even the wind seemed to bend around them as if the environment itself acknowledged their authority. On the colony streets, the Zorathians were startled. Varkan, the officer who had struck Liam, raised his visor to get a better look at the newcomers. He froze. The ships were enormous, but it was the figures that disembarked that truly terrified him. He had heard the legends. The Deathworlders were merciless, relentless, and unparalleled warriors. And now they were here. Humans, protected? One Zorathian muttered, disbelief lacing his voice. Impossible. But the humans didn't need convincing. Hope surged through them as they saw these alien giants, whose very presence screamed of power and justice. Many had never seen a Deathworlder before, yet instinctively they felt safe. Ilaravas, kneeling beside Liam, held the child protectively and whispered, "Help has arrived." Ravik raised his arm, signaling the rest of the team. "Surround the perimeter. Do not engage unless provoked. Our purpose is to confront the offender and deliver justice. Let them see us first." The humans watched as the Deathworlders moved with unmatched speed and precision. Within minutes, they had positioned themselves strategically around the colony's restricted zone. Each patrol point, each corner, each entrance was covered. The Zorathians tried to act confident, but every instinct told them they were outmatched. Varkan realized the magnitude of the situation. He barked orders, trying to rally his forces. "Prepare defenses. These humans, these creatures, they are armed. Do not underestimate them." But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his tone. The Deathworlders were not just armed, they were unstoppable. Then Ravik stepped forward into clear view of the colony and the Zorathians. His voice was amplified, not shouting but carrying a weight that made every being within hearing distance shiver. "Varkan of the Zorathians," he said slowly, deliberately, "you have harmed a human child. This is not a simple mistake. This is a crime against those under our protection. Prepare to answer for your actions." A tense silence fell over the area. The humans held their breath, the Zorathians stiffened, and even the wind seemed to pause. The power of the Deathworlders was absolute. Even without action, they dominated the scene. Varkan's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his energy baton. You cannot," he stammered. But he knew the legends were true. The stories of Deathworlders arriving to punish injustice were not myths. They were warnings, and now they had materialized before him. Ravik's team moved closer, forming a solid line of intimidating warriors. Each step sent a subtle vibration through the ground, and the sheer scale of their presence was enough to silence any thoughts of resistance. The Zorathians had numbers, yes, but the Deathworlders were skill, strength, and authority incarnate. Meanwhile, humans began to emerge from their hiding places. Some wept, others whispered prayers, but all watched with awe. Children clutched parents, pointing at the towering figures who had come to protect them. It was a moment of hope, a promise that no harm would befall them again. Varkan finally spoke, though his voice was tight with fear. You will not interfere in human affairs. They are insignificant. You cannot." Ravik's glowing eyes locked onto Varkan's visor. "You have already interfered. You struck the child. That action alone demands justice. And we delivered justice personally." Then, with a subtle gesture from Ravik, the rest of the Deathworlders shifted their formation, closing in slowly but deliberately. Each movement was a statement. The Zorathians were powerless to resist, and the humans were under protection. Colonists watched as the air seemed to thrum with tension. Hovercars remained frozen in midair, children huddled silently, and even Varkan's elite soldiers hesitated. The presence of the Deathworlders had turned the battlefield before a single blow was struck. Ilaravas, still holding Liam, felt a surge of relief. She whispered, "The legends were true, the Deathworlders are here." Liam's eyes, wide with fear and confusion, followed the towering figures, sensing their power and protection instinctively. The stage was set. The Deathworlders had arrived, the humans were protected, and the Zorathians were trapped between fear and the inevitability of justice. The first steps toward reckoning had begun. The colony would never forget this day. The arrival of the Deathworlders was more than hope, it was a warning. A warning that humans were not weak, that injustice had consequences, and that some beings in the galaxy answered only to the code of absolute justice. And as Ravik raised his hand, signaling the next phase of action, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. The confrontation was coming. The battle for justice, and for the human child, was about to begin. The streets of Eden 7 were unusually quiet. The usual hum of hover cars, chatter of colonists, and distant factory noises had been replaced by a tense silence. Humans peered from behind barricades and windows, watching as the towering figures of the Deathworlders advanced. Even the wind seemed to pause in anticipation. At the center of the colony stood the Zorathian headquarters, a tall, obsidian structure bristling with energy shields and surveillance drones. Inside, Varkan paced nervously, his usual arrogance replaced by unease. He had faced human insurgents, alien rebels, and countless skirmishes, but he had never encountered beings like the Deathworlders. Their arrival had changed everything. "They're too strong," muttered a junior officer, fear lacing his voice. "Even their presence, it feels like the ground itself obeys them." Varkan shook his head. "No. We are Zorathians. We enforce order. We do not fear myths." But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his mind. The humans were protected now, and there was no escape from the towering warriors advancing steadily toward their headquarters. Outside, Ravik and his team paused at a safe distance from the building. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. The humans watching felt a strange mixture of awe and relief. They were seeing legends in motion, a force of justice that would make the Zorathians answer for their crimes. Ravik raised a hand, signaling a halt. "Varkan," he called, his voice amplified yet calm, carrying across the plaza. "You have harmed a human child. That action cannot go unpunished. Come forward, surrender, and face justice." Varkan's visor reflected the towering figures before him. He knew that refusal would mean certain defeat, yet pride burned in him. I will not submit to your judgment," he spat. "Humans are insignificant. They are weak. You cannot dictate consequences here." Ravik's eyes glowed faintly beneath his helmet. "You have already acted. That is enough. We are here to correct what you have done." With a signal from Ravik, the Deathworlders shifted their formation, slowly encircling the headquarters. Their presence alone caused the Zorathian soldiers to hesitate. Some whispered prayers, others froze in fear. Every patrol, every drone, every defense system felt insignificant in the shadow of the Deathworlders. Inside the building, Varkan clenched his fists. His elite guards looked to him for direction, but even they could sense the overwhelming power outside. The aliens had superior numbers, weapons, and training, yet the Deathworlders radiated an authority that nullified all advantage. On the street, the humans watched silently. Colonists who had feared for their lives now felt the stirrings of hope. Ilara Voss, kneeling beside Liam, whispered, "They're here for justice. For him." Liam, pale and fragile, looked toward the imposing figures and instinctively felt protection. Ravik stepped forward, closing the distance to the main entrance. His presence alone sent shivers down the spines of the Zorathian guards. "This is your only warning," he said. "Release the child's life from your crimes or face the consequences. Do not force our hand further." Varkan hesitated. His mind raced through possible strategies, counterattacks, or traps. But each option seemed futile. The Deathworlders' control over the battlefield was complete. The humans were watching. Their reputation, their command, everything was at stake. "You will regret this," Varkan finally growled, signaling his guards to prepare for combat. Energy batons hummed to life, drones activated, and force fields shimmered across the plaza. But the Deathworlders advanced regardless, undeterred by intimidation. Then Ravik moved again, raising his weapon in a simple gesture. Within moments, the Zorathian defenses began to falter. The Deathworlders did not strike yet, but their sheer presence was enough to disrupt energy grids, interfere with drone circuits, and create zones of control around the headquarters. The humans gasped as they saw the impossible unfold. Soldiers trained for decades could not move without restriction. Drones crashed to the ground. Force fields flickered under the unseen pressure of the Deathworlders' presence. It was as if the very laws of physics and fear obeyed these warriors. Varkan's pride gave way to panic. He realized that fighting now would be futile. Yet retreat was impossible. The Deathworlders had him and his forces cornered, leaving only one path: surrender or annihilation. Ravik's voice cut through the tension once more. "You will answer for your actions. Not for the humans' weakness, not for your rules, but for your choice to harm the innocent." For the first time, Varkan truly understood the meaning of fear. He had underestimated the humans, underestimated the legends, and underestimated the concept of justice that the Deathworlders embodied. Pride, arrogance, and rules would not save him. And in that moment, the humans realized the full weight of what was happening. They had been powerless, but now they were witnesses to an unyielding force that had come for them personally. The Deathworlders had arrived not as negotiators, not as observers, but as enforcers of a justice no alien dared defy. The confrontation reached its peak as Ravik signaled his team to advance in a coordinated movement around the Zorathians. The ground shook under the weight of their steps. The air vibrated with authority. Humans held their breath, knowing the battle for justice was about to begin, and that the outcome would decide the fate of the guilty and the innocent alike. The first strike had not yet landed, but the message was already clear. The humans were protected, and any further act of harm would be met with personal, uncompromising retribution. The stage was set. The confrontation had begun. The battle. The plaza outside the Zorathian headquarters erupted into chaos. The tension that had gripped the colony broke as the Deathworlders moved with lethal precision. Every step they took sent a ripple through the ground, a warning that the moment for negotiation had passed. Varkan barked orders, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. Protect the headquarters. Do not let them, but he was cut off as Ravik raised his arm, signaling the first strike. The Deathworlders did not charge blindly. Their movements were coordinated like a single living entity. Ravik led the front, Kaler and the others flanking with deadly accuracy. The humans watched from behind barricades, holding their breath as the legendary warriors engaged the Zorathians. Energy batons hummed and crackled. Shields activated. The Zorathian soldiers were trained killers, but they were no match for the Deathworlders' skill, strength, and tactical genius. Within seconds, the first wave of attackers was incapacitated, unseen forces knocking drones from the sky and alien soldiers disarmed before they could react. Ravik moved like lightning. He struck a guard with a precise blow, sending him crashing into a metal barrier. Kaler followed, neutralizing two more soldiers simultaneously with expert throws of energy pikes. Each movement was purposeful. Every strike calculated to minimize collateral damage while maximizing control over the battlefield. The humans gasped as the plaza became a whirlwind of motion. Sparks flew from colliding weapons. The air was filled with the hum of energy and the shouts of aliens struggling to respond. But even as the Zorathians fought back, they were overwhelmed. Their attacks were strong but disjointed, uncoordinated against the Deathworlders' fluid strategy. Varkan, realizing he had underestimated his opponents, attempted to rally his forces. Focus. Target the front line. Take them down. But fear had spread through his soldiers. Many hesitated, their hands shaking as they lifted weapons, and others dropped to the ground to avoid the wrath of the advancing warriors. Ravik's eyes glowed faintly beneath his helmet as he advanced. He didn't speak, words were unnecessary. His presence alone struck terror into the hearts of the Zorathians. He moved with grace, striking with precision, never missing a beat. Kaler and his team spread through the plaza like shadows of steel. Drones that had once patrolled the skies were shredded midair by energy blasts or disabled by rapid electromagnetic pulses. Alien soldiers found themselves cornered, their strength and numbers meaningless against the Deathworlders' calculated assault. In the chaos, Ilaravas held Liam tightly, shielding him from flying debris. The humans around them whispered prayers and gasped in awe. They had never seen combat on this scale, and the power of the Deathworlders was overwhelming. Yet there was a strange sense of safety in their presence. Every strike that fell against the Zorathians reassured the humans that they were protected. Varkan, desperate, charged at Ravik with his energy baton raised. "I will end you myself," he roared. But Ravik was ready. With a single, fluid movement, he sidestepped the strike and disarmed Varkan effortlessly. The officer stumbled back, humiliated and terrified. Kaler took down a group of Zorathians attempting to flank Ravik, throwing them with controlled force into reinforced barricades. The air was filled with sparks, the clash of energy weapons and the shouts of defeated aliens. Each Deathworlder moved like a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless. The humans watched as the tide of battle turned completely. The Zorathians' morale crumbled. Their soldiers fell one by one, captured or incapacitated, until only a handful remained. The plaza, once a place of fear and oppression, now belonged to the Deathworlders and the humans they protected. Varkan, realizing that defeat was inevitable, attempted one last desperate strike. But Ravik intercepted him, blocking the attack and holding the officer at bay. "It is over," Ravik said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "Your actions have consequences. You will answer for them personally." The remaining Zorathians surrendered, lowering their weapons in defeat. The plaza was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by the soft hum of the Deathworlders' armor. Humans slowly emerged from their hiding places, cautious but relieved. They had witnessed power beyond imagination, and the ones responsible for their suffering were finally subdued. Ilara Voss approached Ravik, still holding Liam. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. You saved him." Ravik nodded. "The child is safe. That is what matters. The rest will be dealt with according to justice." The humans around them began to cheer softly, their relief palpable. The Zorathians had been defeated, not just by brute strength, but by the unwavering precision, skill and authority of the Deathworlders. Varkan, kneeling on the ground, looked up at Ravik with a mixture of fear and disbelief. I underestimated you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "No human, no being, could possibly stop us." Ravik's glowing eyes met Varkan's visor. "You harmed an innocent child. That is not something we forgive lightly. Learn this, humans are not weak, and those who harm them answer to justice personally." With that, Ravik signaled his team. The remaining Zorathians were restrained and taken under custody. The humans watched in awe as their protectors moved with purpose, ensuring no one was left to harm them again. The battle was over, but the message had been delivered loud and clear. Humans were protected and injustice would be punished without mercy. For the first time in Eden 7's history, the colonists felt a sense of safety and hope that had never existed before. The legend of the Deathworlders was real, and their arrival had changed the balance of power forever. Ravik turned to the humans, his voice calm but resonant. "Your safety is our duty. Remember this day. Let it serve as a warning to all who would harm the innocent." The humans nodded, tears in their eyes. Liam clutched Ilara tightly, looking up at Ravik and the towering warriors with a mix of awe and gratitude. For them, the nightmare was over, but the legend of the Deathworlders had only just begun. Justice delivered. The plaza of Eden 7 was quiet now, but the air remained heavy with tension. The battle had ended, the Zorathian soldiers were restrained, and the humans, though safe, were still trembling from the chaos they had witnessed. Their protectors, the Deathworlders, stood tall and imposing, a living reminder that justice had come personally. Varkan, the alien officer who had harmed Liam, knelt in the center of the plaza. His armor was scratched and scorched from the battle, his once proud posture broken. He looked up at Ravik, fear and disbelief reflected in his visor. He had underestimated humans, underestimated the Deathworlders, and now he faced the consequences of his actions. Ravik stepped forward. The plaza seemed to quiet further, as if the ground itself recognized the gravity of the moment. "Varkan," he said, his voice calm but resonant, "you struck a human child. That act cannot go unpunished. Your crimes are clear and there is no excuse." The humans around the plaza watched silently. Some whispered prayers, others held children close. Even the bravest colonists had never expected to see justice delivered so personally and so decisively. Varkan tried to speak, but words failed him. Pride, arrogance, and fear tangled in his mind. "I followed orders," he stammered. Ravik's eyes glowed faintly beneath his helmet. "Orders do not justify cruelty. Innocent lives are sacred. You acted with malice and negligence. Now you will face judgment." The other Deathworlders, standing in formation, began to move with deliberate precision. They surrounded Varkan, their presence suffocating in its intensity. The humans felt a strange mix of awe and relief. These were beings who upheld justice without hesitation, without compromise. Ravik gestured, and the restrained Zorathians were brought forward. The plaza became a stage for justice. The humans watched closely as the Deathworlders enacted a system of judgment rooted in their ancient code. It was swift, efficient, and fair, yet undeniably terrifying to those who had committed wrongdoing. Varkan was brought to the center, his body trembling under the weight of anticipation. The Deathworlders spoke in a language of authority that even the Zorathians seemed to understand instinctively. Words were exchanged, questions asked, and the evidence of his crimes, his assault on Liam, his negligence, his arrogance, was presented. There was no trial in the human sense, no appeals, no delay. The Deathworlders' code was simple. Those who harmed the innocent answered directly, personally, and immediately. Varkan's fate was sealed the moment he struck the child. Ravik stepped closer. His eyes glowed brighter, and a low hum filled the plaza, vibrating through the ground. Varkan, you will experience the consequences of your actions. You will understand the suffering you caused. And you will carry this lesson beyond Eden 7, so that no being ever harms the innocent under our watch again. Varkan fell to his knees, his body trembling uncontrollably. The humans watched, some with tears, others with clenched fists, but all silently acknowledging that justice was finally served. Then, with a swift and deliberate motion, the Deathworlders enacted their judgment. They did not kill recklessly, they did not act with anger. Every move was precise, every strike a message. Varkan's power, once overwhelming to humans, was meaningless here. The children and colonists saw the result without being exposed to unnecessary violence. The officer was incapacitated, stripped of his ability to harm again, and marked as a warning to others. The Zorathians surrounding him gasped. Their most feared officer, their symbol of control and strength, was powerless before the Deathworlders. Fear spread quickly among them. The humans, witnessing this, finally breathed openly. The nightmare was over. Ilara Voss, holding Liam, stepped forward cautiously. Is it done?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ravik nodded. "It is done. Justice has been delivered. The child is safe. The humans are safe. And the guilty have been accounted for." The colonists began to emerge from their hiding places, slowly at first, then more boldly. Relief and gratitude were written across every face. Liam, still pale and weak, looked up at the towering warriors with awe. He reached out a small hand, and Ravik lowered his massive gloved hand to allow the child to touch it. In that simple moment, humanity and its protectors shared a bond deeper than words. The Deathworlders then turned their attention to the remaining Zorathians. They were not executed, but they were disciplined in ways that ensured they would never harm humans again. Some were confined, others reprogrammed to understand the consequences of their actions. Every measure was designed to prevent future injustice. Varkan, now powerless and humbled, was left with a final message. Ravik's voice echoed through the plaza. "This is the way of justice. Harm humans again and the consequences will be swift and unyielding. Remember this lesson for all your days." The humans around the plaza whispered in awe. Stories of the Deathworlders' justice had always seemed distant, almost mythical. But now they had seen it firsthand. They had witnessed power wielded with purpose, and justice delivered without compromise. As the sun began to set on Eden 7, casting long shadows across the plaza, Ravik and his team prepared to leave. Their mission had been completed, but their presence had left an indelible mark. Humans had been protected, justice had been served, and the legend of the Deathworlders had grown even greater. Ilara Voss knelt beside Liam, brushing dust from his hair. "You will grow up knowing you are never alone," she whispered. "There are forces in the galaxy that protect the innocent. Today we saw them." Ravik and his team boarded their ships, their armor gleaming in the fading light. As they ascended into the sky, the humans watched silently, understanding that something profound had happened. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and often cruel, but now the humans of Eden 7 knew that there were those who would fight for them personally, without hesitation, without compromise. The plaza, once a place of fear and oppression, was now a symbol of hope, courage, and justice. And as the Deathworlders vanished into the horizon, the colonists knew one truth: anyone who dared harm humans again would face the same uncompromising judgment. Justice had been delivered. Aftermath and respect. The twin suns of Eden 7 rose gently over the colony, casting golden light across streets still scarred from the recent battle. The plaza, once the stage of chaos and fear, now stood quiet, a silent monument to the day justice had been delivered. Humans moved carefully among the debris, repairing what they could, clearing the remnants of the Zorathians' failed occupation. Liam, now rested and recovering in his mother's arms, gazed at the horizon where the ships of the Deathworlders had disappeared. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew one thing. He was safe and humans were no longer alone. Ilara Voss stood in the central square, surveying the recovering colony. Her eyes were tired, but there was relief in her expression. The humans had survived the impossible, and the invaders had been reminded that humanity was not to be trifled with. She remembered the towering figures of the Deathworlders, their power, precision, and unwavering sense of justice. To the colonists they were more than warriors, they were protectors, legends come to life. News of the Deathworlders' intervention spread quickly. Holocoms relayed images and reports of the battle, showing humans and aliens alike that the galaxy had a new balance of power. Aliens who had once seen humans as weak and expendable now trembled at the thought of crossing them. Even distant worlds whispered of the day the Deathworlders delivered justice personally, enforcing their unyielding code. The Zorathians who had survived the battle were confined and rehabilitated under strict observation. Varkhan, once proud and feared, now understood the consequences of cruelty. Every alien who had witnessed the Deathworlders' judgment carried a warning in their memory: humans were not to be harmed. The story of Liam and the incident had become a lesson etched across Eden 7 and beyond. Meanwhile, the humans began to rebuild. Families returned to their homes, children ran through the streets once more, and the markets reopened. The scars of the battle remained, but so did the knowledge that humanity had been defended by beings of unimaginable strength. Hope returned to the colony, stronger than before, tempered by the reality that danger could always lurk in the galaxy. But now, protection existed beyond their understanding. Ilara Voss approached the central square, where a small memorial had been erected for Liam. Flowers and holographic tributes surrounded the site, left by humans moved by the bravery and resilience of a child who had endured so much. She placed a hand gently on the memorial and whispered, "You've shown the universe that even the smallest among us deserve justice." The humans spoke often of the Deathworlders after that day. They told their children stories of the towering warriors who had arrived from a distant, harsh world to protect the innocent. They spoke of the lesson that justice was not just a word, it was a force, relentless and precise, delivered personally when necessary. Life slowly returned to normal. Children played openly in the streets, workers returned to the refineries, and the colony continued to expand. Yet, a quiet reverence lingered in the hearts of all. Humanity had survived, and their victory was not just in surviving the attack, but in witnessing the enforcement of absolute justice. Even the alien patrols that remained in the area acted differently. They no longer bullied humans or enforced rules with the same arrogance. They had seen what happened when humans were defended by those who did not hesitate to punish wrongdoing. Fear tempered their actions and respect, or at least caution, took its place. Ilara often told the colonists, "Today we learned that strength is not just in numbers or weapons, it is in the courage to protect and the certainty to act when justice is needed." Her words resonated deeply, reminding humans that their value was not measured by their fragility, but by their right to survive and thrive. Weeks later, as the colony celebrated a festival of rebuilding, a faint glimmer appeared on the horizon. Colonists stopped to watch. The ships of the Deathworlders had returned briefly, not for battle, but to acknowledge the humans they had protected. From the skies, Ravik and his team observed the celebrations, their presence a quiet promise that humans would never stand alone. Then, as silently as they had arrived, they departed once more, leaving only the memory of their power and justice. Liam ran through the streets, laughing for the first time since the attack. His small voice carried through the colony, a symbol of hope reborn. Humans smiled, cheered, and hugged one another. In every heart, a newfound courage blossomed, the knowledge that they were protected, and that the galaxy had guardians who would enforce justice personally. Eden 7 became a symbol. Other colonies spoke of the courage of humans and the intervention of the Deathworlders. Humans were no longer just survivors, they were a species that commanded respect, not through fear, but through the strength of allies and the certainty that justice would be served. And so, life moved forward. Humans rebuilt, stronger and wiser. They honored the memory of the child who had been harmed and celebrated the warriors who had protected them. Across Eden 7, in every street and home, a quiet understanding remained. The universe could be cruel, but for those who acted unjustly, consequences were inescapable. The legend of the Deathworlders endured. They were a force of nature, a symbol of hope, and a reminder that justice was not always distant. It could arrive personally, swiftly, and unflinchingly. And as the twin suns of Eden 7 set, the humans looked to the sky with gratitude, courage, and the knowledge that their place in the galaxy was no longer one of weakness, but of resilience, respect, and protected strength. The child survived. The humans endured. Justice had been delivered. And the galaxy would remember the day the Deathworlders came personally.